privilege to welcome our speaker this evening is Andreas Niepel. He's going to share the screen and presentation on a basic therapeutic necessity, promoting mental health as a goal of garden therapy, especially to counteract the harmful effects of a closed space within a neurological clinic. Our speaker is very eminent in the field of garden therapy and has since 2009 has been the president of the International Society for Garden Therapy. Since 1992, he's been the head of the garden therapy department at VAMED Clinic for Neurological Rehabilitation in Hattingen. He's an advisor for the Board of Trustees for German Elder Care, a member of the editorial board of Green Care magazine, and runs a planning and consulting office for therapeutic garden projects. Andreas is a partner of Gardens Help Life, the Institute for Garden Therapy, which provides further education courses in German-speaking countries and worldwide, currently in Poland and in northern Iraq. In 2002, he initiated the first German Garden and Therapy Conference in Bad Lippspring with the Grünberg School of Horticulture and organized the Grünberg Garden Therapy Days, an annual fixture since then. Andreas has published several books and papers with collaborators, including the first German language garden reference book on therapeutic gardening and an integrative treatment concept for people with neurocognitive disorders. Andreas has worked all over the world in therapeutic gardening, including several internships at the NYU Langone, I'm pronouncing that right, Medical Center in New York, and teaching at universities in Switzerland, Austria, and Cologne. So, without further ado, I hand you over to Andreas.
Yeah, okay, it's me, and it sounds so
it's you,
what
go.
you told about me. So, yes, it's a welcome to you all, and I will try the beta version of Zoom. So let's look whether it works out. One moment. I am looking for trellis. Okay, here I am. I hope you can see me and my presentation. So we try the beta version. Okay. Yes, so welcome to my presentation about garden therapy and mental health, and I'm really happy to be here today. Not completely because I told it before, my favorite football team is playing this evening against Chelsea FC, so maybe I will be very quick with my presentation. And yes, it's about garden therapy and mental health. And yes, mental health, that's alongside the other things like a functional motoric training, for example, maybe the most important goal for garden therapy, especially in the German-speaking countries. And it's obviously becoming more and more important when people ask, so what are the goals of garden therapy? But a goal like mental health, yes, it makes it often difficult, both in measuring, how will you measure mental health, in conception and also in legitimization. And therefore, often you hear something like, oh, it's so fine for our patient, and it remains in, oh, it just makes good feelings, without justifying that. And that's often a problem. And so, therefore, I will look about how can we make a concept for garden therapy and mental health. And on the other side, what I will do also is that yes, mental health is absolutely something with what has given gardening a completely new boom. If you ask garden lovers today what attracts them to gardening, then they talk about the balance. So you will hear this word often this evening. They'll talk about the balance. They are talking about having a necessary distance here in the garden, or that they can switch off themselves, or that even their soul relaxes, something like that. And so we see something like a shift in gardening from economics, when it was really about growing food, to ecology. So when I came into the gardens, with the intention of doing something good for nature, to psychology, that is now. Garden is coming from economy over ecology, to psychology. And yes, therefore, this will also be a part of this presentation. I will always like to take a look on the normal garden user. And so in short, you can read it above me. It's also about the question why snails really can actually be good for our mental health. Yes, but first about me, I'm a gardener. So they told so much about me that really hurts. I'm a gardener now. And I'm also something like a garden lover. And therefore all the pictures, most of the pictures I will show in this presentation are from my private garden. Or to be true, they are from the garden of my wife. At least she is really the better gardener than me. And so I will show her a garden a little bit. But the pictures are painted by me. So I'm a gardener, and of course, I'm also a garden therapist. Yes, for more than 30 years, I have been working now in the neurological rehabilitation clinic. And in addition, I'm running a planning office for therapeutic gardens also so long. And yes, I did a lot. But the most important thing is that I get to work every day, and I work every day with patients who are suffering from the most serious diseases. Patients who, after brain tumors, after strokes or traumas, often show limitations in all possible areas of human existence: motor function, cognition, psych. And for this, we, as a clinical team of garden therapy, we offer, of course, the classic garden groups, where we cultivate plants in our greenhouse and in our exercise garden groups, where the focus is on the issue of practicing motor skills, such as mobilization, strength, coordination, as well as cognitive demands on action planning, on memory. And yes, in that context, we also offer single therapies, where patients, for example, can do a kind of endurance test in the garden. And it's okay, they know this field. You know, patients who always says, I'm completely fit, they just want that I stay in this hospital, that they say after 30 minutes in the garden, wow, that's hard. I haven't expected that it's such a problem for me. And so the opportunity to experience your own abilities in an environment that is familiar to your everyday life, that's very important. And we also offer garden groups, especially for kids and for young people in our clinic. And here too, there is also the possibility to get single therapies. However, this usually affects rather seriously affected child. It's because while the offer for adults is more focused on the activities of gardening, for children, we focus more on the materials of the garden. And so we have different offers, especially for them. And of course, speaking about gardens, yes, we have the luxury of owning a 200,000 square meter park with additional special areas such as a walking school or a medicinal plant area. But nevertheless, more and more of our therapies are also taking place indoors. The reason is that we have found that especially those patients who suffer from nature deficit and urgently need garden therapy are just not yet able to participate in this most longer garden groups. And therefore, our garden therapies often begin directly on the acute ward of our clinic, directly at the bedside, with the goal of activation, which really works well. And often that requires very short intervention, often perhaps a maximum of 50 minutes long. And after that, the next stage before our patients can join the garden groups are then our ward groups. We call it mobile garden. They also take place on our wards, but as a group therapy. And already for those patients who are able to take part in groups with a length of, let's say, round about 30 minutes. I will come back later to this important point of contact with nature. A special offer that we have is a garden workshop for young people, in which we create, we build, we modify together their very own garden area. This garden group is called Straw and Berry. And we make it as a motivation tool for these young people and that they want to participate in a self-motivated way. Therefore, we have for this garden group an own Instagram account. Yeah, and the very special idea for this garden group is that our youth should deal with failure. Often garden therapy is made in that way that the people should have success, and we have garden groups where we try this. But our patient's experience is, as a colleague once said, you know, tumors, stroke, the catastrophe of their lives. But that's not completely true. It only becomes the catastrophe of their life when they cannot integrate the logical following failures into their own personality. And dealing with failure, and also with the fact that not everything always has to be perfect, that's something you can learn in the garden. And I will also talk about that later. Yes, and the last offer, which we briefly have for more than 10 years, that is the offer of garden therapy on our closed ward for people with neurocognitive disorders. And what I will tell in the next minutes is, yeah, it's mostly about this program. But before I come to that point, let's look back to something like the normal gardeners. I told you that I will talk about them, so you can see me when I started gardening. And I'm a gardener for more than 40 years now, and believe it or not, often I got the question, people ask me, what is it that makes a good gardener? I have no idea why they ask me. They should ask my wife and not me. But they ask me, and after a while of thinking, I came to a definition. And the definition is that a good gardener has the ability to create conditions under which plants can grow and thrive. And I was happy about that definition. So, because it's a very positive definition, because from that point on, we trust in our plants. They grow by themselves. Grass does not grow faster if you pull on it. Why do I mention this? When I was looking for a good definition of therapy for a book project about that concept for neurocognitive patients, I came across Carl Rogers, who says, and here it's a long version, in short, that therapy means to create conditions under which people can grow. Wow. It's nearly the same definition I have for a good gardener. It's the same for a good therapist. And also it's very positive because it means that then they will grow by themselves. Wow. And starting at that point, that brings us to the question, what is it that people need to grow? Oh, let's look. Yeah, that's it. What do we need? And that we and our mental health grows and thrives. And the next question is then, can gardening be significant in that process of growing? And if so, is it a special form of gardening that we need? Because one thing is clear, not every form of gardening is completely good for people. No. Take this allotment gardener here above me, a master of vegetables, you know, people like that. And everything works out in his garden perfect, and everything grows in straight rows, well sorted and precisely planted. But it makes this gardener completely happy. But there's also the nature gardener on the other side, in whose garden everything can be chaotic, where dandelions and nettles have their places and where plants may spread as they want. And this gardener is also happy in his garden. But put one in the other's garden and nobody will be happy. So there is no standard well-being garden, and there can't be a standard well-being gardening. So what gardening should it be? Short break. You see, I'm a master of breaks. At that point, I want to talk about, very short, the role of garden therapy. I'm working in a rehabilitation center, and garden therapy is quite normal here. But what's the role of garden therapy often? Unfortunately, it is something, let's say, like the cherry on a cake, or even the cherry on the marshmallow, on the cream on the cake. So nice and cozy, but everything also works without it. And so the garden therapy is then often the first to be dispensed when things get tight. But is there another way as to be the cherry on the cake? For this, we go a step back to the conditions to grow and to the question, what should therapy and medicine do? What is the question? What is the most important task of therapy and medicine? Is it growing, like I was told, or is it healing? And look here, it's something completely different. It's the 2,000 years old sentence, which means primum non nocere, which means it's not the healing. The first place for therapists and medicines is don't harm. Don't harm the people. That is the basic that we should do. And so it's very logical that we have to define something like basic goals. And these are namely, do not harm your patients. The next is create a therapeutic relationship and create something like a willing to therapy. Without these goals, you can forget to do everything else. No PT, no OT, no psychotherapist is able to do anything if you are not working on these basic goals. And therefore, the question also for the garden therapy in our clinic was, can garden therapy be a part of a basic therapy? And that's important. And that gives garden therapy, we'll see, a completely new role. To speak about this, we have first to clarify the question, what means harm? And a good construction for this is the view on the basic needs. You know, what need people to grow? Basic needs means that everyone, you and me, whether sick or not, whether old or young or where you came from, has these needs. And basic needs mean, by definition, that if they are not satisfied or even attacked, then they automatically lead to disturbances. They harm. In the case of physical needs, we are very easily able to describe them. Everybody knows them. Eating, if you don't eat, you get sick. Drinking, going to toilet, moving, and so on. And how important it is to look on these basic needs shows us the view on the biggest therapeutic group we have in our clinics. It's the nurses. That's what they do. They look that the patients eat enough, drink enough, go to the toilet and move, and so on. So their most important goal is do not harm. But what, and that was our question in our clinic, but what is with a psychology, different word, mental, I said mental, with the mental needs. Do they also exist? Do we have psychic needs that everyone has? And that if they are not satisfied or even attacked, leads automatically to disturbances? That's one question. Do we have them? And if we have these needs, if they exist, then the next question for our patients, maybe for everyone, is, are these needs attacked? Both patients and normal gardeners. And if they are attacked, then we have to make an intervention. Sure, it's the same with the physical needs. You can't say, oh, this patient is drinking not enough. Okay, it's his problem. We have to do something. And if his psychological needs are attacked, we have to do something. And the question is, can garden therapy compensate? And how does it work? So let me see what's next. We will look on the basic psychic needs. And let's look on the first. And the first is very simple. It is that we all need positive experiences, positive emotions. It's a completely normal basic need. It sounds very simple, but there is a very complicated process into this. The initial thing is that we always make something like an assessment of the situation, and that influence all the following cognitive and mental processes, asking, for example, whether a glass is half full or half empty. And it also affects the ability to learn. And therapy is nothing else than learning. And especially in neurological therapy, therapy is nothing but learning, creating new synaptic connections. And we know that certain neurotransmitters, especially dopamine, are needed for this to succeed. Without it, synaptic reorganization, and that is therapy, is actively inhibited. So therapy needs absolutely positive emotions. They should be fun. But is this need attacked? Yes, of course it is attacked. With every of my patients is attacked. It starts with pain, and it includes fear and insecurity about my future, and I don't know anything about that clinic. And it goes further on, that it doesn't smell good on the station, and that it looks very dark and something like that. But pleasure is a basic need. And both the disease and the treatment context attacks it strongly. Therefore, a balance must be created here. And we have to think about concepts to do something for positive emotions. And yes, can a garden do here something good? Of course, it's absolutely possible. Because how is it done concretely? Yes, we know two ways to get positive emotions. The first is the most direct and simple, and it goes directly to pleasure. This first and simple method of creating positive emotions, it goes completely over the senses. Smelling, seeing, feeling, all that. And here the garden has, of course, very much to offer. We have our surfaces, we have our plants that smell so good. We have scenes, taste, yes, everything I mentioned. So our toolkit is very huge, and it must be used. Garden therapy must be used as a pleasure therapy. The second approach, on the other hand, and it has often nothing to do with pleasure, is that we get positive emotions if we get something as a reward. It's rooted in the fact that whatever we experience and receive, we factor it. And we factor how much energy we have expended to get it. We do so. There are a lot of studies about this. And that's, for example, is why people enjoy a marathon. It has nothing to do with pleasure. You're looking what you have done before for that. No direct enjoyment. And that is also the reason why the tomatoes from your own garden always taste better than those from the discount store. And the element of reward is one of the basic principles of therapeutic gardening. And so we can say without doubt, okay, on the P, garden therapy and gardens offer excellent opportunities to evoke positive emotions. Okay, we can do this basic therapy. And so come on, let's go to the next psychological need. It's also one which everybody knows. It is the need for social integration. That's also a need we all have. We are mammals. And not only that, we are also animals that live in a pack and do not roam around like lonely bears. And the experiments of Jean Harlow, they have impressively proven that we place this basic need, yes, even more above such needs as eating and drinking. Without social contact, we die. And is this need attacked? Yes, of course. And again, not only for our patients. My patients, they are completely attacked in this. And we know it also from cities. We know, for example, that residents of large cities are twice as likely to suffer from depression as residents in rural areas. The real reason lies in the mixture of too little social contact, coupled with being overwhelmed by too many individuals. And that is exactly what many patients experience. And so it's even harder for them. Just think on the consequences of aphasia. And if the treatment contact, for example, on a closed ward, also reinforces the whole thing, then compensation, balance is absolutely necessary. Oh, next. The importance of a social garden. Yes, it's also known for a lot of private garden use. At least it's about, it's the most important thing. People are choosing a garden as their private hobby. And so, yes, also community gardening has become a booming topic. And also in a therapeutic context, this should therefore be used absolutely. A group is defined by common interests, by a common work, and by common goals. To create this is also the task for garden therapy. And yes, the garden is the perfect field for this. So again, here it is. Garden therapy can and should be used as a socially integrative therapy. We have two of the basic psychic needs we can work on with garden therapy. Let's see on. The next letter is the V, and it stands for the necessity, vicinity to nature. I worked long on this to get this letter so that it matches at the end. Yes, and we don't have to talk very long about it. Everybody knows that urban living space makes people sick, not only because of the social integration, but also about, yes, the lack of nature. You see the Central Park behind me, and Olmsted already knew this when he describes the Central Park in New York, for example, as a kind of urban therapeutic. And yes, we all know it. The entire studies over the last 40 years since Roger S. Ulrich wrote this first significant studies shows we need an vicinity. I try not to use the complicated words. The vicinity. We need the prospect of natural spaces for our health, so we can go on very soon. In the meantime, this necessary natural contact has been recognized as a basic for health, and especially for mental health. Yes, we need green spaces for our health. Not like this. This is a clinic in Germany, but we need absolutely a contact to nature. And that special meaning, it became very clear to me some years ago when we treated a patient with our mobile garden I told you about on the intensive care. We had a woman, and we tried, my colleague and me, finalized to mobilize her into, yes, she was lying in the bed, and we tried to mobilize her to sit and to go one step more and more. On one fine day, my colleague and me, it was a fine day, it was spring or something like that, and we decided that we would try to mobilize her into the wheelchair, to go outside, and we have planned a lot of things outside. But when we told her that we would like to go outside with her, she starts to cry. She burst into tears, and she told us, I have not been outside for almost a year. That happens. She lives in a nursing home, she got a stroke, acute care hospital, then rehab. That happens. And I told this story many times, but only a few understood that this woman was so lacking, that get in contact to nature is a basic need. Nobody understood, and they said, okay, that's hard, but what's so problematic with it? Until Corona forced some to stay in quarantine for, let's say, 2 weeks, not a year, 2 weeks. And they start to cry and they run around and they want to go outside. Yes, being outside is a basic need and it's a basic goal of garden therapy. Yes, and sometimes that is even enough. I told you we have planted a lot when we were outside with her, but we don't have to do anything. It was completely okay only to be outside. And therefore I want to make a very small break, because we in Germany, we thought very long about what is the role of garden therapy in therapy and in medicine. And we orientated ourselves on the biopsychosocial model of the World Health Organization. And here in this model, we can get biological, physically ill, and then we need physical therapy. We can get psychological ill, and we can also get socially ill. And that brings us to psychotherapy or social therapy. And therefore we thought, where is garden therapy? Where are we staying? Are we more psychotherapy? Are we more physical therapy? What is our role? But then we thought this model is not enough. I cannot only be physical or psychological ill, I can get ecological ill. We see it in the last years. And we talked about the vicinity and the need to go to nature. And of course, this need is attacked. We treat people in an extremely nature-deprived context. Think about the nature deficit syndrome. And therefore, we are talking here about the biopsychosocial ecological system. People can get ecological ill, and then they need ecological therapies like green care. And that is the basic place for garden therapy. Okay, back to the basic needs. Is the basic need to get in contact to nature attacked? Of course. The picture you see behind me, by the way, is in hospital. And so we have to do something, especially we garden therapists. And it's also a tag for a lot of normal gardeners who are living in a surrounding that is completely far away from nature. And yes, gardens can balance that through nature contact. Of course, that's our main thing. So we have already 3 points we can do for the mental health with garden therapy. Let's come to the next. The next letter is the I, and the I here is for identity and self-experience. It is about increasing our self-worth. The question is, do we really need to increase our self-worth? Or isn't it better to have a realistic image of ourselves? For a long time, people believed this until they realized that we all easily seen us better than it's done from the outside. We think we are better team players, better listeners, better speakers, completely rubbish, and even more intelligent. Not convinced? Well, one example. Here in this Zoom meeting, 39 people, the average IQ is currently 100. That's how it's defined, it's quotient. If we are twice as intelligent, it will still be 100, not 200, because it's in quotient, so 100. And now everybody of you can estimate for himself where he is standing. And I think most of you are thinking about 105 or 110. But that's statistically impossible. But it's okay to do that. We all value ourselves better because we need it for our mental health. The only group, by the way, who has a realistic view on himself are people with depression. So, but what is the situation of our patients? Especially in therapy, we are constantly evaluated from outside. And this is something that is even worse than the patient would do by himself. It's the same as our modern world, where we are always, we are always under a kind of evaluation, social media and so on. And we know it's not so good. If I read bad comments about my presentation, it's not good for my mental health, so please be kind to me. And so we need also a balance here, something like a side stage, preferably where we give our patients the feelings, yes, that we are perhaps, that they are even perhaps better than we therapists. Then they really thrive. Maybe you know is when we, for example, when we sing with our patients, and I'm not able good to sing, but they blossom up. So we need a situation where they can see that they are better as we think. And yes, the garden often gives us the possibility. And so let's use it for that. A lot of people bring so much ability in gardening to the clinic. Yeah, that's a gift for us in therapy. We have in our clinic, I told you about the youth, created a special program, especially for that, for young people who are really highly exposed to self-presenting, school, Instagram, parents. And this is absolutely a problem for young people who are so limited due to their illness. Think about my patients. And they have to integrate, as I told you, this into their new image of themselves. And so the focus of our garden work group is not the greatest possible success. It's the goal is the experience that failure is an opportunity. And that 80% is absolutely enough. And that improvisation and something like bungling are completely okay. And this is how our garden workshop builds their garden. And we proudly present it on Instagram. Not to be perfect. Not to be perfect is something that these young people will feel in their life. And they have to learn it. And they can learn it in the garden. That not to be perfect is something completely normal and completely good. The biography work, the writing, and also, let's say, the new writing of your own biography, often done in looking back to your history. That's important for the mental health. We try to create a new positive biography, and we need the garden for that. And in our experience, yes, we can say that the garden and garden therapy is really best suited for that. If you set the focus in your concept on this, not to be perfect. So gardens, therefore, can offer the opportunity to have a positive effect on this basic need. So we will come to the next. The next is orientation, control, and a sense of understanding. And here I often hear very critical voices. Control? Is that really good? Isn't that a bad thing? So you think about the freaks who want to control everything. Okay, short explanation about the idea of control with a really famous experiment, not with patients, but with rats. They set rats under stress. And this was done by causing them pain by small electric shocks on the cage. And these strokes of fate, they came out of the blue without any control. And there was an experimental second group who gets the same hard fate, with the only difference that they could hear a small bell before each electric shock. And there was a third group who has even been taught how to turn off this electric shock by pressing a button after the bell, which they did not always succeed in doing. However, these rats were constantly running around the cage, the last group. Every time they heard a bell, they run and run and run. The first group was sitting apathically in their cage after one point. And then they looked which group of these rats had the most stress. And unexpected, it was not the last group who was running, it was the first group. So the stress is not the pain. The stress is the unexpected. And therefore control does not mean that I have or I can influence everything. So that everything works good out. But it is about that I have an understanding on the processes that are affecting me. And this feeling of understanding the world is control. And it's eminently important for our mental health. And yes, the garden teaches this so perfect. Not least just because of our failures, our little electric shocks. Hard, okay, that is it. When the frost ruins everything, or when the snails eat everything we want to harvest. But at least it's something we understand. And that's why snails are good for our mental health. And is this need attacked? Yes, of course, it's completely attacked by illness and by the treatment context to a high degree. Especially patients on a closed ward with neurocognitive disorders absolutely do not understand the world anymore. This is a constant symptom in people suffering from dementia and also by those with psychosis, wow, what a word, and many others. And in closed environment reinforces this, like rats in a cage. What a patient told to me, with shocks out of the blue. And this is one of the best things a garden can do for patients, to create a world where we understand, where we have the feelings that everything that is happening around me is something I understand. I don't have to control it, but I have the feeling I have an influence on it, like the rats that are running around and try to not to get that electric shock. If we create a garden therapeutic program like that, then the garden is good, even without working there. It is about the feeling, oh, I understand this world. And this concerns many patients. Okay, next point, I have to go on. Next point, and I will be very fast with it, is also an ID, an I for intention. And it means motivation and having a feeling for the sense of life. A very complex topic. So that I would like to reduce it here and want to concentrate on one small aspect of this item. It's about the feeling of autonomy. One of the most important principles, for example, for intrinsic motivation, as you see here, essential for our therapy. And of course, we therapists all experience that and we see it in the whole world that, yes, let's say the autonomy is attacked everywhere. Not only by our patients, but extremely with them. This begins with the planning of therapy. They have to go to therapy. There's nothing with autonomy. And it includes the rules in a clinic. They have to look for everything that has to done. And yes, and at least, of course, they lose the autonomy about their own body. Here, again, it's okay to use the garden as a field where we see, yes, we have a limited autonomy in garden, but we play a role and we take part in something that is felt like something that is bigger of us. And therefore, the garden can give us something like understandable pictures. We can explain our own life, also a limited life of our patients, with a lot of images in the garden, images of growing, of passing, of change, and of care. And therefore, often in our programs of garden therapy, the key word is self-explanation. And in garden therapy, we can help with these nature images. The people find so much pictures, metaphors in the garden. And we can show our patients that, let's say, their own life is something like a garden. A life that we also plan a little bit like a garden, that we reschedule from time to time, but that also has its own life. That something comes into this garden and to this life, even if you haven't planned this. And then it's a matter of accepting it. And also with that view, the garden can be a perfect balancing medium for the feeling of autonomy and sense in the world. Wow. And now I'm coming to the last letter. The last letter, last factor, also essential for our mental health, is called here tone regulation, because it's about the balance between, let's say, effort, activities, and relaxation. It is that point that we know that mental health is also connected with the physical experience of one's own body, that we want to experience ourselves actively. A lot of studies in recent years have clearly shown that this moderate effort actually has a direct influence on growth process in the brain. And of course, here the garden has also so much to offer, from the small floristic activities to digging up beds. And to this letter T, tone regulation, we also have to count the relaxation. It's a feeling of calm and in turn of security. And I think nobody is surprised, of course. In garden therapy, we can dose this activity and relaxation very well. Okay, at this point, I have mentioned the most important factors for mental health. And we have seen that these are strongly attacked, both by the disease as well by the treatment context. And according to the motto, do not harm, a basic form of therapy must therefore be responsible for compensation, for balance here. And here they are again. And we have also seen that garden therapy can play an important role in this necessary form of therapy in many places. And that brings me back to the role of garden therapy. I mentioned at the beginning that this is often seen as a kind of luxury therapy, you know, the cherry on the cake. What we have done in the concept of our closed ward is that we created the opposite. It is the basic therapy. It's more precisely the positive basic therapy, as we call it in our concept. And garden therapy takes place as a basic therapy on this ward. And that's how we do a lot for our mental health. That's our plan. That's how we do it. It's part of our concept. So garden therapy is something absolutely necessary. And it brings me back a little bit to the role of gardening for everyone. It's about positive gardening that is good for mental health, both for patients and for normal garden users. Wow. And now I'm through and close my presentation. Wow, it was really difficult in that language. Here I am.
That was excellent, Andreas. Really enjoyed that. It's just conceptualizing garden therapy as a necessity, and absolutely right. We put it over. Jenny, are you doing? Who's in? Yep, you're doing the questions.
Yeah. One of our first questions is from Linda. She's asking, how are patients referred to your therapy, or does everyone have an opportunity to participate?
Okay, I'm working in a clinic with 270 patients. 60 are kids and youth, and 210 are adults. And we are having in our groups round about 20 of them. And on the closed wards are also 12 patients. And in the other programs, it's round about, again, 20 patients. So we are running Well, a lot of therapies a week, and at least it's 50 to 60 patients who coming to the garden therapy. So not every patient.
Yeah. Interesting. And do they choose to do that themselves?
Partly.
Yeah.
Partly. Normally, they got it from the doctors, from our teams. So we think about what fits to a patient. With two things. On the closed ward, it's for the patients always possible, also if they don't have it on their plan, think about autonomy, to take part in that programs. And that leads to the fact that always nearly everybody takes part. So garden is something that brings the people to us. Mm-hmm. And we tried the same with the youth group I talked about, our garden workshop, Straw and Berry. We have some patients who have to come, but we want that they come by themselves. And therefore it's organized in that form that every afternoon from 3 to 5, me or my colleague is there. They know it. And they can come every time they want. And we are more happy about those who don't have to come, but come by themselves. And that's also the idea for the Instagram account. So we want to put them out from the clinic, and Instagram works good for them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fiona wanted to ask about the messages that you want to get across during the gardening therapy, such as being imperfect. It's okay to be imperfect. So do the young patients, do they just get that through doing the activities, or do you have to explain these messages?
Yes, we explain it, but not so directly. So we started this group just because I had an experience. We made cuttings from plants, and then I wanted to bring them out into the greenhouse and said, okay, let's see what works out with them. But maybe it doesn't work. So we are early in the year, and they were completely shocked because I said, hey, we have done everything. We have done our best, and now it has to work. And yeah, that's like it is. You know the world. You have to dream, live your dream, always gives 1000%, and then everything works. And we have to tell you, no, it's not like that. Life is different, and often things don't work, and that's also okay. So we give them the messages, of course, but not so directly. And often they say it by themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So, okay. So if some of our patients says, hey, this garden is super, it's not perfect, look how it looks like, and it's not straight and something like that, but I like it, it's perfect. So yeah.
Thank you. Could you clarify something that Jane O'Neill was asking? Are the garden therapists integrated into the clinical team at the unit?
Yeah, completely. We are completely normal part of the teams, like the PTs, OTs, art therapists, and so on. And also we have to documentate everything we do. And yes, we are part of the teams. That's necessary.
You do. Yeah. So you're writing up notes alongside.
Yeah, I love it.
Fantastic. Okay. And she'd like to know, how do you work with the occupational therapists?
Okay. Yeah. That's an important thing, especially for the situation in Germany. We created garden therapy as a multi-professional tool. So you see here garden therapists who are also occupational therapists, but also art therapists or psychotherapists. We run some groups together with the occupational therapist, of course, especially these with the endurance test or the normal garden groups. But we also have groups we do together with the pedagogues, with the kids and the youth. We have garden groups we do together with a psychotherapist. Some we do by ourselves. And those I like most, I do together with our art therapist. So because that fits really good, art and garden. And that's what I love most.
Thank you, Andreas.
Yeah,
some
welcome.
Lovely comments here. Somebody going, wow. Thank you, Andreas.
Thank you. And sorry for that, the worst English you heard in these 2 days.
Oh, we love your rich. You have so much. It had so much richness to describe. It was fantastic. Thank you, Andreas. You described these studies and anecdotes so vividly. That's from Lucy. Lucy, thank you. I wonder if anyone else has any questions that they want to pop into the chat, or would you like to? You can use the reactions button to put your hand up, and we can ask you to unmute and voice your question. You'd like to do that. Oh, here's a new message. Jane's passing on her thanks. Linda.
Yes, maybe I could ask while other people are thinking about it. It sounds an absolutely incredible clinic, Andreas. Is it quite unique in Germany, or are there other places working along these kind of principles?
Yeah, it's not so unique. I think we were the first to start really in that form, garden therapy in a rehabilitation center. But meanwhile, it's not normal, but you can see it very often, especially in neurological rehabilitation,
right,
in psychosomatic rehabilitation, and also in some psychiatric units, especially where people have problems with drug abuse and so on. And you see it in some, let's say, closed institutions like jails and so on.
Yeah.
But it's not so unique. No, I would like to say that it's unique, but it's be good for myself worse, but no, it's not.
That's fantastic. That's a good, just from my interest, it feels as if then gardening therapy has really gathered momentum in Germany in a way that maybe other countries. Why do you think that is?
I think the most important point was that we integrated the OTs, and they brought so much like assessments and a therapeutic approach. And then we integrated the pedagogues who have completely different approaches and also different tools and ideas. And then we integrated the art therapist. And that brought really a lot of inspirations, a lot of tools. And I think that's good to integrate them, not to say that is only our thing and do yours, but how can we work together? And yeah, I think that's a reason for that. The nurses, the doctors, you need them. Because it's a question about acceptance. Often I think you all have the question, is garden therapy or horticulture therapy accepted? So that's always a question you hear. And acceptance is something on different stages. It's not something like a common acceptance. You need the acceptance of your colleagues. And then you need the acceptance of the institution. Then you need the acceptance of the patients and of the relatives, and then of the public, and at least of the politics and the insurances. And if you want everything now, and you want it now and everything, then you're frustrated.
Mm.
So do it step by step. And the first thing was to get accepted by the colleagues. And garden therapy, I think, is well accepted by the therapeutic colleagues because we integrated them. And meanwhile, it's really accepted by the patients. At least they love it. They really love it. And therefore, it's also accepted by the relatives and now by the clinics. And now we are working on public, Corona helped, and then we are working on the politics and on the insurances. So that's the next step.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Fumi is asking, do you face any challenges in trying to do this?
Every day. Hey, I'm working on a closed ward with people with neurological disturbances. Hey, plan R never works. And so, yeah, there are challenges every time. And of course, the patients change. I'm not quite sure. We have visitors from all over the world. Here in Germany, we see that the patients I see now are not those patients I see 20 years ago. They are multi-morbid. They really have seriously problems, and therefore garden therapy has always to change. We started with these normal garden groups, and then we saw, hey, the patients who take benefit from garden therapy can't take part. And then, therefore, we can't change the patients. We don't change the patients. We have to change our programs. And so we decided we go onto the wards and we make 15-minute units on the intensive care wards. And this is never at the end. We always have to look what needs the patient, what needs the institution, and can we serve it? So every day we have to find something new.
Okay. Thank you very much.